Hi there, I'm Sven and I'm going to briefly introduce you to our this year's design studio called Design by Research. In this studio we are trying to develop and apply evidence-based and user-centered strategies for the design of a complex building. Just like the scientists here in this picture, we will try to precisely understand how the building design performs for its users and to figure out which parameters need to be changed in order to let the design perform better. But why is such an approach necessary at all? As you might know, designing buildings is a process that is highly based on experience and intuition, especially when it comes to anticipating how the future users of a building do experience it and behave in it. Although this intuition now surprisingly often leads to quite acceptable results, it is of course also prone to failure. And this can be quite problematic when complex and expensive buildings are designed based on the wrong assumptions. And actually, this happens also to quite popular architectural offices. For example, in the design phase of a Seattle public library, the architects tried hard to incorporate the needs of different user groups. However, when we look at the users now actually experiencing it, it's quite far away from the designer's good intentions. So, still today it seems we do not have the right methods to properly incorporate the user experience into our designs. And this is actually quite surprising because buildings are essentially made for humans. And therefore, just as Walter Gropius said already more than 60 years ago, psychological experiences are as real as any material problems of structure and economy. I consider them, in fact, as basic and primary. And further he goes on that vague phases like the atmosphere of a building or the coziness of a room should be defined precisely in specific terms. And this is actually nothing else than what we today often call evidence-based design. In evidence-based design, we want to evaluate the effect of a planning on user experience and behavior on a scientific basis. And based on this, make informed design decisions. And this is what we are going to do in this studio. And here we are following two approaches. The first is to learn how to analyze features of a design which are related to user experience, such as daylight, visibility, or the accessibility of spaces. And based on the numbers that we here can compute, we will try to make improvements on the design. However, of course, not all aspects can be put into numbers. So the second approach we will follow is to actually conduct user tests. And this we will do using virtual reality. So with these VR devices such as the one my colleague Martin here is wearing, we let potential users experience the building design in the scale 1 to 1 and see what works well and what doesn't. Now, for systematically conducting such user tests, my colleagues and me developed a nice tool that we will use during the semester. With this tool, you can, for example, create tasks such as wayfinding tasks to figure out how well people can find certain locations inside a building. And while conducting this task, the trajectories that the participants took are tracked and can later, of course, be visualized in order to figure out where, for instance, people had problems finding their way. Second, you can create questionnaires for evaluating how the participants experience the spaces. For instance, if they perceive them as bright or dark, narrow or spacious, exciting or boring. And afterwards, we can, of course, visualize and analyze the results again. Finally, because not all aspects can be captured by predefined questions, we implemented a module for making annotations. Thereby one can freely move inside the building and leave comments to any point and issue he likes. Also here you can visualize the results, whereby the green points indicate positive comments and the red points indicate negative comments, such as this one here: I like to have easier access to the coffee, I don't always want to go a detour. What we will then do with all these tools is actually to change the typical procedure of a design critique. So instead of that you give a presentation where you try to convince us that your design is super great, in this studio we will go a different way, which is a peer review process. And in this process you have to convince yourself that your design is good or has some flaws. This means that all the design studio participants have to slip into the shoes of future building users and actually walk through the designs of the others and evaluate it. So you'll not only get feedback from an architectural jury, but from potential users. And afterwards, you will have to analyze this feedback and revise your design. Now, finally, a short remark on the actual case that we will use to test this methodology. And here I'm very glad to tell that we currently are running a collaborative research project together with Deutsche Bahn Station and Service. In this project, we are further developing these tools for the evaluation of future train stations. And within this studio, we are, so to say, testing how applicable this research is. Last year, we did this already very successfully with the train station of Bitterfeld. And this year, we are going to another town close to Hamburg, which is Neumünster. Neumünster has about 80,000 inhabitants and is an important traffic node between Hamburg and Flensburg. The train station is located very close to the city center. Here you see it a bit closer. The train station with a square in front of it. The city center is about 400 meters from there. A big shopping center 200 meters away. Directly next to it, the central bus station, which connects the train station to the other parts of the city, and a residential quarter, which is quite disconnected by the train lines from the other half of the city. Here you have a view of the square in front of the train station. And as you see, the building looks a bit run down. The building with its octagonal tower was built in the late 1970s and over time got extensions such as the service center. However, the entrance, the shops, the way to the platforms do not really work well. And the spaces and uses do no longer meet today's needs. So the complete building shall be redesigned. First of all, the entrance hall with shops and services, then the tower, which shall be transformed into a hotel. On the left side, the building shall be extended by an office block, including co-working facilities. And lastly, the urban square and the connections to the other side of the train tracks shall be developed. So there's not much left except the sky, which means a lot of work for you to do. So I hope you got interested and joined the class. And if so, we see us on Thursday 9:15 in the computer lab.